What does it take to become the face of Tommy Hilfiger, the ultimate muse to Christian Siriano, and be universally loved by an entire industry, only to be found unresponsive in a Midtown Manhattan apartment at just 27 years old? In January 2023, Jeremy Ruehlemann wasn't a cautionary tale the fashion industry saw coming. He was the muse Christian Siriano called one of the most beautiful souls he had ever known. He had walked for Tommy Hilfiger, modeled for Perry Ellis and Superdry, and built a career that the people closest to him described with a warmth that had nothing to do with how he looked. He was, by every single account of every person who knew him, exactly as good as he appeared. And that is precisely what makes his story so difficult to sit with. So what really happened to Jeremy Ruehlemann? And what does it say about an industry that can celebrate someone's image for years without ever seeing the person inside it? Jeremy Ruehlemann was born in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and grew up in Mahwah, a quiet suburb that could not have felt further from the New York City fashion world he would eventually inhabit. He studied psychology at Rowan University from 2013, describing in his own words how he had genuinely fallen in love with understanding how people function, cognitively, emotionally, and in relation to each other. Before modeling was even a serious consideration, he spent summers working as a camp counselor at Odyssey Teen Camp, a nonprofit camp in Massachusetts for teenagers who felt they didn't fit anywhere else. LGBTQ+ youth, artists, outsiders, kids who had been invisible everywhere they'd been before. He was not there for a resume line. The camp's own account of Jeremy describes him as someone who gave love easily and abundantly, especially to those who needed it most, and who had arrived there himself, as a teenager, with walls up, before the camp showed him how to take them down. That arc, from the boy who needed to be seen to the young man who made others feel seen, is the through line of everything that follows. The transition to modeling came in 2017. He wrote about it with characteristic self-awareness, not with vanity, not with ambition toward fame, but with the curiosity of someone who had found a new kind of fieldwork. Traveling and socializing with people from all over the world has taught me more about how people work than any psychology class ever could, he wrote on LinkedIn. He had always planned to finish his degree, he added, but the work was accelerating and the moment required a choice. He walked runways for Christian Siriano. He modeled for Tommy Hilfiger, Perry Ellis, and Superdry. He appeared in GQ and Playhouse magazine, represented internationally by Next Models in London and Miami, Core Hamburg, and IMM Brussels. And the GQ shoot was not just a credit on a list. In an interview for the magazine at just 24 years old, Jeremy said that modeling, to him, isn't about being attractive. That looking handsome was boring to him at that point in his career. What he wanted was to look different, to be transformed, to be pushed. That is not the quote of someone running on vanity. That is someone who understood the craft. His agent Jason Canner would later put it most simply, that when you were in a room with Jeremy, you wanted him to succeed. In an industry built on transactions, that quality is either ignored or exploited. The people who worked with Jeremy tended toward neither. Because here is the thing about Jeremy that makes his story genuinely different. He was not performing warmth for the camera and crumbling in private. The warmth was real. Everyone who knew him confirmed this. His agent, his designer collaborators, his childhood friends, and his family. His father, Akim, described a son who was happy, vibrant, full of life, and universally loved. The public image and the private person were, in this case, the same. And that is not a small thing to establish, because it changes the nature of what his story is actually about. Because something else was also true. Something that existed parallel to all of that warmth and success, quietly and for years, without the industry that employed him ever having any mechanism to see it. Jeremy had been battling an addiction to prescription painkillers, including Percocet. His father confirmed this publicly, noting that Jeremy had gone to rehab and had genuinely tried to get clean. He made clear that the struggle with prescription medication did not define who his son was, that Jeremy was someone who loved life and gave everything to the people around him. fighting a battle that millions of people around the world fight, without the people closest to them ever knowing how serious it has become. And here is what makes it impossible to look away from. In the summer of 2022, he said, "The best feeling in the world is being happy after you were sad. Feel your emotions, don't numb them with anything. Just feel them, get over them. I promise you, it's the best way to really get happy." He was, in the most painful possible way, describing exactly what he was fighting, from the inside. The person telling his followers not to numb their pain was quietly losing his own battle with it. That video was public. The industry could have seen it, but nobody was looking. The fashion industry did not know. His bookers did not know. The brands that put his face on campaigns had no visibility into what was happening behind the image they were purchasing. And the honest truth is, the industry was not built to know. There is no welfare infrastructure, no system through which a brand or agency discovers that the model delivering the shot is quietly fighting something serious outside the frame. Male models in particular move through the industry as individual contractors, booked by the job, not employed by the year, with no single entity responsible for their sustained well-being. Each brand saw a fragment of him. A campaign, a runway show, a magazine shoot. None of them had the full picture. None of them were structured to want it. The fashion world's relationship with the people it employs has always been structured around extraction rather than investment. You are useful while you deliver the service the industry needs, and the moment that service becomes unavailable, through age, through change, the relationship ends without ceremony. There was never care to begin with. There was only the image. His own LinkedIn profile contained a line that reads differently now than when he wrote it. The modeling industry has just as much to do with rejection as it does with praise. He was writing about confidence, about learning to sustain your sense of self in a profession that assesses and discards constantly. But he was also describing the specific isolation of a world where you are visible enough to be evaluated and invisible enough to disappear. And then, on January 21st, 2023, he did. Jeremy was found unresponsive in a friend's apartment in Midtown Manhattan. He was only 27 years old. His last Instagram post, published the previous day, was still up. A behind-the-scenes photograph from a Tommy Hilfiger shoot, captioned simply, "BTS with Tommy." The previous September, he had been the face of Superdry's fall coat campaign. The work had been continuous, the career still building, the image still intact. Nothing in the professional record pointed toward what was happening behind it. News of his passing was first announced on Facebook by his childhood friend, Gianni Simpson, bonded with Jeremy since they were both teenagers. Jeremy 15, Simpson 17 when they first crossed paths at Odyssey Teen Camp, inseparable ever since, over a shared love of music, sports, fashion, and tattoos. Simpson called Jeremy his brother. He spent the whole day trying to find words and ultimately found none adequate. "All day I've been trying to gather my thoughts and what to even say," he wrote. That sentence says everything about what it means to lose someone the language hasn't caught up with yet. Soul Artist Management's Jason Canner confirmed the news and released a statement that read like a real tribute from someone who had known a real person. Jeremy was authentically himself, salt of the earth. There was just something about him that made you root for him. His excitement over a big booking, his optimism when something didn't work out. When you spoke to him, he listened with his eyes and ears. He truly was, and will always be, one of a kind. His father Akim spoke to the press with a grief and a clarity that made the circumstances unmistakable. Jeremy had been struggling with prescription medication for years. He had done rehab. He had fought to get clean. This was not, his father made absolutely clear, a choice. It was an accidental tragedy, a loss with no desire behind it. He loved life, Akim said. He was very vibrant, a wonderful soul and a very giving guy. There was no desire to end his life. This was accidental. Christian Siriano's tribute on Instagram was one of the most personal public statements any designer had released for a model. He wrote that he had never posted anything like it before. "This is for Jeremy, the most beautiful man that gave so much love to everyone he met no matter what. He was one of my muses, and he always will be. He inspired me, and I will love him forever." Beyond his inner circle, the broader fashion industry's response to Jeremy Ruehlemann's death was genuinely warm. Andy Hilfiger, Tommy's brother, commented on Jeremy's final Instagram post with the words, "So sorry," and a pair of praying hands. Uzo Aduba, Bruce Pask, Corey Bond, and Andrew Werner all sent condolences. Halston creative director Ken Downing wrote, "Love to your family who you adored, as much as they love and adored you." Celebrity makeup artist Hung Vanyo called him one of those people that even if you met him once, he would have a part of your heart forever. In an industry where grief is often performed at a careful distance, the response to Jeremy's death felt like actual loss from people who had known an actual person. And then the calendar moved forward, as it always does. The February lookbooks went into production, the spring campaigns began shooting, the next faces were already being scouted. Jeremy was gone, but he had not disappeared. Not for everyone. 2 months after he passed away, his girlfriend Mary Bryan Clark, only 24 years old, working in fashion PR at TB, also passed away unexpectedly. She had been posting about Jeremy since his death. "I love you forever and miss you every day." In February, she shared a video of herself jumping into his arms, captioned, "Best feeling in the world. I miss you every second." And then she was gone too, leaving behind friends and family carrying the weight of both losses at once, with no support from the industry that had connected their lives. No cause of death was publicly disclosed for Mary Bryan. The machine registered the second loss with a fraction of the attention it had given the first, and moved on, because the machine does not have a protocol for grief that compounds. But the people who actually knew Jeremy did something the industry never would. His family, together with Odyssey Teen Camp, created the Love Loudly Project, a scholarship fund for teenagers who feel like they don't fit anywhere. The same teenagers Jeremy had spent his summers fighting for, the same kind of teenager he had once been himself. The camp describes him as a life force, a light maker, a truth defender, whose unconditional love taught young people to see their own light. He arrived at Odyssey Teen Camp as a boy with walls up. He left as someone who spent the rest of his life helping others take theirs down. The Love Loudly Project is what the people who truly knew him chose to do with his memory, not a campaign, not a tribute post, but a fund to make sure the invisible kids kept getting seen. What Jeremy's story ultimately asks is a question the fashion industry has never developed the tools to answer. How many people working at every level of this world, models, PR professionals, stylists, assistants, are quietly fighting something serious behind the surface they bring to work every day? The system has no way of knowing. It has never built the mechanisms to find out. It sees what it needs to see to fill the booking and ship the campaign. Everything behind that surface is, by design, someone else's problem. Jeremy's life was proof that this arrangement works, right up until it doesn't. Jeremy studied psychology because he wanted to understand how people actually work. He then spent 6 years inside an industry that has never once asked that question about its own people. The machine that built campaigns on his image moved on in a news cycle. So here is the question his story leaves behind. If fashion can look this closely at a face and still see nothing, what exactly is it looking at? Let me know your thoughts on this story in the comments. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.